Lost Ark comes around, and if you're not following the Korean side of things, it might have took you by surprise. It was such a popular game that the Steam download servers went down because so many people wanted to play Lost Ark. Huge commercial success, and of course, the progressive thing to do is when something is a huge commercial success, you need to criticize it, to explain to the developers how they need to make their game, which is selling very well. And the free market is saying that they want to play the game. I mean, you look at the numbers, and that's the truth. There's plenty of women that play the game because I saw them streaming this on various channels. So no one has a problem with it, but then you have the senior editor at a major gaming publication, the intellectual artillery, going around and saying that the game is sexist. Sexist. I love how they just cast the affirmation, they shift 5 mana and they cast the sexism card without explaining how exactly is it sexist? Like, what woman in the real world suffers because this game exists? Like, do you think your mother or your sister has a more difficult life because Lost Ark has been released? And the women in Lost Ark, they look like the men, okay? It's a fantasy, so you're taking it all the way to the extreme, so all the women are extremely beautiful or the men are extremely athletic. There's no sexism in it. And by the way, this is how games used to look like 6 years ago in the West. But whatever, if a game journalist calls it sexist, then it must be true. I mean, if a game journalist says 2 plus 2 equals 5, who are we to disagree? They're the authoritative sources. And I love it's like the sexist design decisions have been called out by players and critics alike. So I actually looked at this. Players, there were around 4 or 5. 2 of them got a lot of traction. They had like 25 people responding to the post, but like most people were telling the opening poster to shut the fuck up. And the other people were getting like 5, maybe 9 responses. So these are the players. I mean, obviously, most people do not dislike the game if everyone is playing it. And it went on top of the Steam charts. I don't care what some people say on the Twitter. Reality is that the game is a commercial success and people like it. And the only people who don't like it are moral busybodies. The core issues have to do with a strict gender divide for the game different classes. I mean, I guess, this is a legit criticism, but I don't think it's so big. So, like, if you want to play some classes, you're stuck into either the female or the male role. But that's okay, it gives, I guess, more personality to those classes. Diablo 2 had the same issue. I didn't find it to be a big problem because I couldn't play a male Amazon or a female barbarian in Diablo 2. Not everything needs to be like Western video games. Not everything needs to be the same. And this is exactly what they are doing. By pushing diversity, they're actually pushing uniformity. Every single game has to be exactly the same. We noticed in my previous video how Ubisoft developers freaked out because Elden Ring is different. It's like, no, that's not how you're supposed to make video games. They're supposed to be corporate, and corporate says that this is how the video game is like, and you're making it different. Yeah, they're taking a risk. That's what it's called. It's taking a risk, and they're making money. But what's even more funny is that they complained and they complained, and eventually the Korean developers actually gave in to the complaints, but they gave in such a beautiful way that it pisses off the critics even more. Because the way the developers gave in is they said, okay, you are complaining that all the women are wearing revealing clothing and you want the women to be more dressed. So they released new armor models and new clothing models, and now players have to choose. I mean, if you want to play like a skimpily clad girl that looks as if she's about to go clubbing, you can do that. If you want to cover her up and make her look like a prude, you can do that as well. Now, my question is, when you're going to log into Lost Ark, what do you think the overwhelming amount of people are going to choose? How many of these players that complain that they couldn't dress up their character you're going to find in the game? I am willing to bet that over 90% of the players, men and women, by the way, because you can now go on Twitch and you can see women play this game. You can even see them on YouTube. they are going to choose the revealing outfit. Why? Because it's fantasy, it's beautiful, it's exactly what people are looking for. So, critics BTFO. This is why they're seething right now. They're absolutely seething. They're foaming at the mouth because it's like, no, you're not supposed to give players choice. You're supposed to take it away from them. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. The only thing you're supposed to take away from people is money, and you're supposed to give them what we tell you to give them. The gender divide for the game's different classes is also suspect because they want to seem to map onto conventional gender stereotypes. Like, not everyone in the world agrees that gender stereotypes are a bad thing. By the way. This is so... Since when did we agree that gender stereotypes are a bad thing? Like, you're saying, if I'm walking with my wife on the street and all of a sudden there's a dog, a vicious dog, that appears in front of us, and conversation isn't going to solve anything, right? You're saying that if I do the gender stereotype of a man, which is to position myself between my wife and the dog, that's a bad thing. No, I should hide behind my wife, right? Get her to fight the dog. Yeah, we saw how the gender stereotypes worked with the conflict in Ukraine. Immediately, no one complained about the gender stereotypes when Ukraine made a law so that men under the age of 65 cannot leave the country. I didn't hear any feminists complain about it. So knock it off with like, oh, gender stereotypes are a bad thing. Not everyone agrees. So anyway, and by the way, like, they're not even against gender stereotypes. They just want to reverse them. Like they want the woman to take the role of a man and the man to take the role of a woman. Like, for example, there is this famous actress at The Big Bang Theory. I kept giving this example because it's very famous. But you know, the actress who plays Penny, like, she goes on and she says that she makes around $1 billion per episode. But even though she has all the money and she could hire anyone who she wants to do the housework, she likes doing the housework when she gets home. She likes cooking for her husband. She likes doing all those things. Feminists freaked out. It's like, oh my God, you're not a good role model. What are you doing? Right? So they're not about like allowing people to choose. Get the fuck out with this bullshit. But my favorite part is when the developers from Lost Ark explain why they do this, and they say, well, this is part of Korean culture. In other words, multiculturalism. The game critic freaks out even more. It's like, well, no, multiculturalism. No, everything is California culture. Like, California culture is multiculturalism, and that's it. You're not allowed to have your Korean culture because, look, there's even people in Korea that are complaining about the game. And again, same argument, you know, like, I don't care how many are whining, how many are complaining. You look at the market. You look at the market, and this is a very, very famous RPG, so it tells you that you need to shut the fuck up. You know, like, even I am willing to backtrack, and when I see something that's woke, but it makes money, I'm going to say, well, clearly they must be doing something right. You know, it's not for me, but I mean, it's making money. Like, for example, Princess Shira on Netflix. It's not for me, I don't like it, but I can't say it's bad if people are watching it and they're tuning in. I mean, clearly there is a target audience for it. The free market has decided, and we can talk about whether or not I find it enjoyable or whether or not I would let my kids watch it. But I can't say that it's a bad product because it's making money. Alternatively, other games like, for example, or movies, Female Ghostbusters, right? That's shit. That is objectively shit. No one wanted to watch it. It was a feminist movie, allegedly, but women didn't go watch it either. So clearly it's shit. That's how you judge things, right? So you have absolutely no right to say that this is a bad game or anything like that, because it's not, right? And if you were to change it, if the developers were to change it, I'm pretty sure they would lose a big chunk of their player base, because they will usually say, oh, if you make the game more inclusive, you're going to have more people playing. No, if you change the game, it's not going to be what the people play it for, and you're going to have the core audience leaving. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.